So today's video, I'm going to give you 3 tips on how to become an analytics engineer. So to become an analytics engineer, a lot of you probably transition from being a data analyst, which is kind of a stepping stone in your career. You have the options to maybe become a data scientist, or maybe you want to become a data engineer. But there's also this other option, right, which is analytics engineering. And what that provides for you is a great way to earn more money, right, as far as becoming an analytics engineer compared to a data analyst, as well as still being able to work with the business and the capacity you were probably doing data analyst. When you become a data engineer, the work you do with the business isn't as hands-on, and you're more worried about infrastructure and providing data for downstream teams. You have to go beyond SQL. And what I mean by that is you have to learn data modeling for an analytics platform, right? So that may be a typical common pattern is a star schema model. And what that does is that allows downstream teams, so data scientists, data analysts, to be able to take your data and make insights and provide that to the business. The data engineer uses APIs and they build endpoints and infrastructure to be able to consume data from external systems and then provide them into like Snowflake, for example. Your job is to be able to be the bridge between the data analyst, the data scientists, and the data engineering team, right? Again, your job is very simple. It's to set up data so downstream teams can use it to provide insights. Tip number 2 is you have to start to learn a data transformation platform. A very common one is DBT. There's also SQL Mesh, and even tools like Snowflake have the ability for you to build infrastructure that allows you to develop what we said in step 1, these downstream models, right, that analysts and data scientists can use. And the reason this is important, right? So typically, if you're coming from a data analyst role, especially at a large company, you don't really have control over like infrastructure. You can't save your queries and things like that. You got very used to having to like probably put your queries into like a shared drive, and then you may have to change the dates, or maybe you were able to do some store procedures, but you had to put them in like some type of protected environment in a schema that the IT team ran, right? But if you're an analytics engineer now, you're really probably ingrained in the IT team, so you're really supporting this infrastructure. So you need to have a transformation engine like a DBT, which that basically takes, what that tool does is it takes software engineering principles and DevOps principles and puts it in a team for data teams, right? So you're building the SQL models in a modular fashion. You're building unit tests, you're building data tests, you're building end-to-end testing. You're gonna be building CI and CD pipelines. So that way your transformation tools, when you deliver those models, have really high reliability, right? Because at the end of the day, you gotta think about it. These data analysts and these data scientists in the business is expecting your models to be up effectively 99.9% of the time, right? So you can't work in the same structure that you were working as a data analyst because it puts the business at risk. Okay, guys, here's the third and last tip. And it's kind of like 2 mixed together, but they work together. You need to be able to work inside of an IDE. You need to feel comfortable with the terminal, and you need to feel comfortable within a code repo, right? And these things work together because typically like an IDE would be a pretty common when it's Visual Studio, and you may be working with GitHub or GitLab, and that's where you put your code, right? So again, if you're using DBT, right, that's where your code would go. And you have to be comfortable using the terminal, right? A lot of this comes down to just basic, like, and they're not basic things, but just common things, right? So if you're using GitLab, you're probably going to want to set up your authentication into GitLab using SSH keys, right? So being able to follow those instructions on GitLab site to be able to create the private and key pair, and to be able to be able to communicate your machine to GitLab to have that trusted authentication, right? But also with like DBT, right? Like for example, like I typically for my clients when I'm working on things, I'm doing DBT inside of a Docker container, right? So being able to like use Docker, being able to follow the instructions on how the terminal works, right? And being able to type in the commands in the terminal is going to be huge, right? Because when you're doing the testing and trying to build out your models, you're going to only be able to run your tests or run your models locally. And that's the way that within the CLI tool, you're going to do it, right? So with DBT, they have DBT Core. That is that product is the open source product, which is free, which again, a lot of companies are going to want to use that because it's free, right? All they have to pay for their like compute costs and things like that with Snowflake or whatever. So it's a preferred method. So you want to get comfortable using the command line interface. Otherwise, you may have to pay for the pay product. Not saying it's not good, but then, that's a more user-friendly thing. But to really help yourself as an analytics engineer, to help yourself in the job market, being comfortable with the terminal is going to be a big deal. You're probably not going to see it on like the job requirements. You're not going to see it listed in the description, but I guarantee you when you get into the role, it's going to come up. And being comfortable, you don't have to be great at it because I'm not great at it, but I can do most of the basic commands that I know are necessary. So just learn them and feel comfortable with them, okay? I got a bonus tip for you, right? And as you notice, I haven't brought up Python. Here's my opinion on it. It's probably not, a lot of people probably won't agree with me. I don't think Python is that important to learn. If I'm being honest with you, I'd rather you guys spend more time getting comfortable with these AI tools, so like Claude Code or Cursor. And let me tell you why, right? So Python and SQL, if you think about it, they're like pieces to a puzzle, or like let's say you're a chef, right? And you're making some great meal. They're the ingredients, but the chef has to have the mindset of how to put together the dishes, how the ingredients work, how to pair the foods with the wine, and the experience and how they're plating the food, right? They're in a more of an architectural role. And with the way things are going with AI, being able to use these IDEs like Cursor, right? For example, they're AI focused or AI first for that matter, really help you think, be able to take the time, be able to plan out how you're going to do your work, and really gives you more ability to think like from an architectural perspective, right? So when you're working with things like DBT and working with AWS and how you're going to deploy this code, how you're going to be able to run it on a schedule, right? It can really help you plan those things out. And then, basically, like I said, give you the plan and the steps, and then you can go executing those things, right? And again, Python is just one way to execute like code. A lot of times SQL is good enough. So Python to me is something that, yes, you should learn it, but these AI tools help you work a lot faster. And you can use these AI agents to break up work, right? So you can use them for like, you can have a testing agent, you can have a deployment agent, you can have an agent that looks for like random, they can do debugging or look for possible errors and things like that that may come up that you didn't even think about, right? Giving it kind of off the wall use cases, as well as you can have it when you like, let's say you create a new ticket, right? Let's say someone creates a ticket for a new feature. You can set up like an end-to-end process for when that ticket comes in, it can start working on the code and you can come and review it, right? So again, analytics engineering is great, but in the tech market today, you have to be flexible, you have to be dynamic, and you have to be able to really position yourself for the future. And Python is great, but let's be honest, guys, like AI is the future. So being able to really harness that to me, is more important than learning Python.